Good day, viewers. Welcome to another edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television with me, Manir Dan Ali. Our guest today is Dr. Lawan Mohammed, or rather Dr. Mohammed Lawan Yuhuza, who trained as a veterinary doctor and has worked in one of the biggest irrigation projects in Nigeria in Borno State, that is in New Marte. He's also worked as a federal civil servant, retiring as a director. And more recently, he's been the pro-chancellor of 2 different federal universities of the country. Dr. Mohammed Lawan Yuhuza, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
I don't know, I wouldn't want us to maybe dwell a lot on probably your more recent work as a pro-chancellor at the University of Oye Ekiti and the other federal university, but we'll want us to dwell more on the aspect about your training in the university and your early work in agriculture, because agriculture is still a big issue in Nigeria. We are still not food sufficient, and there is more or less currently even a crisis in terms of prices, whether of rice, one of the staple, or even the more ordinary people's main food, maize. Within the last 3 weeks, it has almost doubled in price from 100 kilo at 25,000, now it's over 40,000. What could be responsible for this kind of huge jump? I mean, aside from the usual excuse of the fuel price increase, which shouldn't affect it because it's the diesel whose price has actually gone down that is used to transport heavy goods like maize.
Thank you very much for having me. And before I dwell into the issue of current prices of foodstuff, I will want to say a little bit about my career, which you have requested in agriculture. I was a staff of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture, and then later on posted to our World Bank project, big World Bank project for livestock. I think the credit for that project was over $40 million at that time.
When was that?
1986 to 1996. That is the period of the implementation of the project.
And what did it entail?
Exactly. $14 million of that amount is for smallholder credits, which was administered by the NACB. That is the Nigerian Agricultural and Cooperative Bank, the one that is headquartered in Kaduna.
All right.
So that is a major component of the project. Another component is grazing reserve development. And there's also another component for ranch development. There's also another component for research, that is support for on-farm research. And those are the main 4 components of the project.
And will you say the project was successful, especially given more recent developments, the conflicts over grazing areas, the farmer had a conflict, and even the way current government are making something which started since the 60s, that's even artificial insemination, improving the herds that we have, as if it's something new. Does that show that project like that World Bank one did succeed in any way?
Yes, I think even the project completion report of the World Bank scored the project very high. For example, the credit side, which ordinarily you know how smallholder credit schemes end up. But in that particular one, the collection, that is repayment by various farmers, was over 82%, I think, if I can recall, which is very rare. And the grazing reserve component has also succeeded in identifying, developing 10 additional grazing reserves located in various places in Nigeria, like Kachia in Kaduna, Bobi in Niger State, Gidan Magajia in Kwara, Beji Kolo in, I think, Kogi now, and there are some in Taraba and Adamawa, and each one of these is not less than 35,000 hectares.
Is there anything that is still alive and kicking from, I mean, all that project, all the millions of dollars spent? Is there any specific thing that is still functioning?
Yes.
That you know of?
Yes, definitely. I mean, if you go to Kachia now, there is a very large pastoral training center that was built with the World Bank resources at that time. It is purposely for the training of pastoralists in modern animal husbandry practices. If you go to Bobi in Niger State, there is a large livestock service center that we built inside the grazing reserve that is functioning. I understand the state government is even expanding that one. These are the two that I can remember. There could be others, I don't know. And but one thing I think which should not be forgotten is the capacity building that the project gave to the staff that work there. I am a very good example. Whatever I have achieved in life, I think is as a result of the training that I received under the World Bank project.
But the big problem is the continuity. Why is it, and you have worked in government at the highest level up to being a director, you've acted as Federal Permanent Secretary in several ministries. What's the problem with the Federal Public Service that these programs cannot be sustained beyond one administration?
I think it has something to do with the nature of the projects themselves. You see, if you plan a project and then you now maybe apply most of the funds in areas where after the funds have been exhausted, the government resources will not be able to continue. Take, for example, I was in development planning in the project, and I was involved in planning, procurement, and things like that. And you find that out of the loan amount of $40 million or something, you find that about, if you take away the credit component of $40 million, you are left with about $26 million. You find that $26 million, if you look at the various application of the funds, will go into importation of items. Motor vehicles, equipment, those kind of things.
Just maybe like Balarabe Musa accused the World Bank that actually the loan they give is their staff and expatriate that end up soaking most of it.
Well, Alhaji Balarabe Musa is our father, so I wouldn't want to disagree with him, but I want to say that as somebody who was involved, I think I do agree that sometimes the component of the loan is applied mostly in the importation of equipment, which at the end of the day, they apply what they call ICB, that is international competitive bidding. So you find that the beneficiaries even of those procurements will be outside companies, international companies, not the local ones. I think in the most of the World Bank projects, they have LCB, that is local competitive bidding. I think there is one in between, I've forgotten, and then there is also the ICB.
And this practice has continued because even last week I saw that local manufacturers of electricity meters were protesting that there's some World Bank project and the project appears to give priority to the international bidders, not the local bidders, and at the end of the day, it will cripple the existing local industry.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so at the planning stage of the projects, I have seen it. The country, that is the beneficiary country, has to stand its feet and ensure that its own interest is protected in the loan. That, if you look at India...
And a lot of times, why is it that a lot of times it appears the federal civil servants are in cahoots with the foreigners? They agree to terms that are not favorable to the country.
Sometimes it is the government policy. Government wants to invest in certain aspect of the economy. The civil servants implement government policy. They don't make policies.
But they deal with the nitty-gritty. Imagine what happened with the case that is in court. That is those people who signed a contract to do with, is it gas? And then it never, and then now it's in court and they are trying to claim billions of Nigeria's money for doing nothing. Weren't there the civil servants who agreed to terms that were injurious to the country?
That one was not done by civil servants. I have the privilege of reading some of the documents concerning that agreement between the suppliers of gas, the GEMCOS, that is the companies that use the gas to generate electricity, and then between the GEMCOS to the transmission company of Nigeria, and then between the transmission company of Nigeria and the distributors.
The other place you worked in, New Marte, the biggest probably irrigation project in Nigeria, thousands of hectares.
60,000 or so.
Also, is supposed to help to produce wheat especially, which was the Lake Chad Research Institute's remit. And then somehow we are still importing wheat. That project has more or less completely collapsed. Now you can blame Boko Haram, but even before Boko Haram, the project was like comatose.
No, I don't think so. I was project manager 85, 84, 85, up to part of 86 before I became commissioner. So, and the total irrigation area is 60,000, as you say it also. But about, I think, 25,000 was brought into actual cultivation. And power was provided through a big powerhouse. There's a pumping station that takes water from the Lake Chad and then into the farms. And at one time, honestly, it's so long that I can't remember the figures, but wheat was abundantly produced. People used to go and buy, even there's a flour mill established in Maiduguri that buys the wheat from Chad Basin Development Authority. There was some technical issues with the water because the Lake Chad was receding. So the intake channel has to be extended at time to follow in the water. But that did not stop production activity. It is, I believe it is still the issue of Boko Haram that stalled the operations of Chad Basin Development Authority. Is very unfortunate, really.
A very good point for which we could go on a short break and then resume the discussion after that. Viewers, it is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television. Welcome back. It is 30 minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Dr. Mohammed Lawan Yuhuza, a trained veterinarian and somebody who knows a thing or two about agriculture and the effort to boost Nigeria's production capabilities. Should we go back to the first question, which we haven't dealt with? That is the question of what can be done by the new administration now to arrest the current high rise in prices of staples, rice, more lately maize, and others, and all the, implication of this.
Yes, thank you. I think prices are always associated with demand. If demand is high, price obviously will go up. And if also supply is low, naturally the price will also go up. And Nigeria is a very big country. And we have to feed ourselves. Unfortunately, I think about annually Nigeria imports various kinds of food to the tune of $10 billion every year. And not only that, the local agricultural activity, in terms of crop, livestock, forestry, fisheries, is such that they cannot meet the demand of food generally. So obviously, price will continue to go up, but there are certain indices, I think, of agriculture that needed to be addressed. If we have to increase, exactly, if you have to increase our productivity. Number one, fertilizer supply is very critical to the improvement of productivity. Number two, we have very weak institutional arrangements and linkages. More institutions that used to provide services in terms of other extension, tractor services, etc., have almost died out. So, number three, everybody knows that rainfall has reduced over the years.
The climate change
issue. Because of desertification, climate changes, and things like that. So, which means an area that used to give you maybe 1 ton of rice or wheat or maize, you probably now have to cultivate 3 times that to get the quantity that they used to get maybe 20 years ago. So, which means there has to be a very strong effort in providing extension services. And unfortunately, in Nigeria, everybody will say federal government. But agriculture is in the concurrent list in the constitution.
Which means the state governments,
and local governments have a very big role to play.
But one big issue that the federal government needs to settle is insecurity, because even this unprecedented price rise of, say, maize this year could be because of the effect of last year's shortfall in production, in security, compromise areas.
That could be true. But even before that, Nigeria, I think our population increases by nearly 6 million every year. Every year we increase by about 6 million. But our food production does not increase in commensurate with that population. So whether there is insecurity or not, we still are not able to meet our food needs in this country. And we have to really invest seriously in agriculture, particularly the linkage between research and extension.
Which is a good point to raise, because one curious thing is this annual hike in the price of tomato, which we can grow abundantly. And then you find that at the height of its harvest period, it could be as low as 500 naira per basket where it is produced. And then at a period like now, it is as high as 40, 50, up to 60,000, depending on location for the same basket.
Absolutely.
Why is it that our research effort hasn't dealt with this, so that there is the kind of tomato that can resist the rainfall, that can resist the tuta absoluta, that problem of tomato?
Yes. I think it's a question of taste. The normal housewife will always prefer fresh tomato, for cooking. And so you find that even if you are to process tomato in such a way that you preserve it and then produce it and sell it out of season, the market for it will not be as high as the market of fresh tomato. So I think that is...
But isn't that presumptuous? Because we find that now locally, people no longer buy maize like that. They buy the processed flour of the same maize. So if there is ease in terms of prepared tomato that is affordable, they may not need the fresh one.
No, it's not a question. It's not a question of taste, and it's not a question of ease of processing or ease of preparation. No. It's a question of taste as far as tomato is concerned.
That is for the elitist family. For the local guys who are concerned about providing food at the lowest cost, I'm not sure that will be a consideration.
It is. It's like frozen chicken and fresh chicken. You find that even you, Malam Manir, I'm sure you would rather go and get live chicken, slaughter it, give it to Madame, prepare it for you, rather than go and buy frozen chicken, which maybe is even though it is not allowed to be brought into the country now. Importation of frozen chicken is banned. But you know, Nigerians, they could still find a way of bringing it in.
You have touched on one of the most successful areas of commercial agriculture in Nigeria, poultry production, and is currently under threat because of this maize price, because people cannot produce at a price that is affordable. Many people are walking away from eggs, from poultry products because they can no longer afford it. Has it reached the crisis level where some government intervention is needed by your reckoning?
Yes, I think so. I want to agree with you that if I read somewhere that the demand for poultry products is far, far higher than what is being supplied. And government, which I think is a very good decision, banned the importation of frozen chicken and also banned the importation of day-old chicks.
Which is why the industry has developed.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a very good policy and it's really helped the industry. But obviously, I think about 40% of poultry feed is from grain. So if the grain production is low, naturally feed cost will be high. So there is this relationship between the production of grains and the price of poultry feed. So long as these problems that we have said of agricultural development in Nigeria is there, it will definitely affect the poultry industry.
So how does this new government fix or at least address the problems in a proactive way?
Yeah, I think number one, the government should review the current agricultural policy of the country generally. I believe there is need to separate commercial activities of agriculture and development activities. I think personally that fertilizer procurement and distribution is a commercial activity. Government should not go into that at all.
I thought it has more or less done that since the additional years when he was minister.
When he was minister, but I think if you look at the problem is, as I said, there is this lack of synergy between the states and the federal government. Governors import fertilizer and distribute to the people because it's a good vote earner, right? So you find that if government has banned importation of fertilizer and the states are doing it at the level of governors, I don't know what anybody can do about it. But I believe that production and distribution of fertilizer should be left to the private sector. Number two, the same thing with the chemicals. These are all commercial activities, and then seeds. But the area of price support, for example, government can say, okay, this year, maybe after, that is next year, the price...
As the price guarantee scheme.
Something like that.
So that people know before they even plant what is going to be the price.
And if you go to the market, you are not able to get that price, government now gives you that support, but not in cash, but in kind. In kind, maybe there is a supply company or something, you go and get seeds or fertilizer or chemicals commensurate to the level of the price support that you require.
But I thought it was the World Bank where you worked that actually recommended and government accepted to exit the commodities board, which were there in the 70s and 80s.
I don't know. That one, I don't know whether...
But you know that the commodities board were there.
Oh, yes, and they were...
And then they are no more there.
The marketing boards.
Yes.
The marketing, they were there and they were playing a very important role. In fact, they are the ones that, actually in northern Nigeria, at least for groundnut and what other product? Mainly groundnut.
And cotton.
And cotton, exactly, and cotton. And there is a price guarantee, which the government gives, and then is the board that ensures that that price guarantee is met, and then the people, whoever is there, gets that price, and so you will never lose.
What sort of person will you envisage that the new government should appoint to drive this thing, the agricultural push?
Well, I think Nigeria is blessed with a lot of educated...
I'm saying it because I've seen some groups in the agriculture space saying, appoint one of us. Does it have to be that for him to succeed?
No, I think that is politics. That is politics. But I'm sure the president is a very intelligent person. He has a lot of tentacles all over the place. So I'm sure he knows what to do. The institutional arrangements are there, but they need to be strengthened. But they are weak.
Like the Bank of Agriculture, it's surprising that the last administration was doling out money not through the Bank of Agriculture, but through the central bank. Well, and look at where it landed.
I think it is not only the Bank of Agriculture that suffered that kind of what I would say neglect, because it's an institution that has been there for over 40 years, and it has developed the capacity to administer credit, and you didn't have. I know that when we were working with them, NACB has an officer in each local government of this country.
I think they still do.
Okay. Each local government. So which means from the local government right to the top, there is a process that the bank can go through and provide credit and also collect back repayment. That's why our own credit scheme in the livestock actually succeeded. Because in every local government there is an officer of the bank, and there is also our officer. They work together. They identify you. Malam Manir, yes, is a good man. He can fatten livestock, and then there will be 2 checks for you. If, for example, your loan is 50,000 naira, just for an example, there will be 2 checks. 1 check for the cattle that you are going to buy, and you will go with our extension man, with the bank man to the market, so that the animals are bought and brought to your house. And then the feed that will take you, I think, about 180 days or so, will be given to you by us. So the only money that you get, I think, is about 20% of the total. So you find that because the beneficiary did not handle cash, he had no choice but to, be in the activity. And when the time comes for the animals to be disposed of, they go to the market with our officer and the officer of the NACB.
So there are checks and balances.
Absolutely.
Which is a very good point for us to end this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming to the program.
Thank you, Madam Manir.
That is it. We've come to the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep a date with us.